All right, welcome to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis, and we are here for another one of these live shows, the second one that I've done. So, yeah, if there's lag, if there's issues, if I'm not doing a good enough job taking you guys' questions, please let me know in the chat. But I appreciate all you guys being here. We'll fire this thing up, and if you are new to this thing, I do a podcast almost probably 2 times a week now where I'm talking about the season. I'm talking about kind of this Vikings start, this 5-1 start. And I give some of my thoughts after watching film, after talking to people inside the building, after looking at a lot of metrics, and always enjoy doing some of that stuff. So that's what we do every week. And I've tried to sprinkle in a couple of these live shows because it's fun for me to interact and just take straight questions from you guys who I know probably have a lot of them, especially on a day like this where things get floated around. So if you're in the watching this show and you have a question, just toss it in the chat right there and I will get to it. I'm just going to run through these. Sometimes I'll just go straight down the list. Other times with some of these questions, I will pick and choose if something catches my eye. And so we will start right there. I don't have a rambling intro. I don't have any crazy thoughts. I am flying to Los Angeles on Wednesday for this game against the Rams, and I'm excited to go do that. So, yeah, here's how we're going to do it. I'm just going to show some of these questions, and then I will get right to them. So we will start with Amir, who was the first one to hop in here and ask a question. Amir reads a lot of the stuff. He watches the show all the time, and I appreciate him for that. His question here is, should we be concerned about the lack of pressure in the last 2.5 games? This question, because it was asked before we came on here, I actually went into some of our statistics at The Athletic. We have a company called True Media that we use, and it is a phenomenal resource for a lot of my stories and a lot of my analysis. And I just separated each specific game to see, like, has the pressure that has been generated from this team actually decreased in the last 2.5 games? What was interesting is the Vikings' worst pressure rate in a specific game this year was actually the game against the New York Jets. So that was a game ago, which is Amir was on it in that regard. Now, what was fascinating and kind of even surprised me was that the Vikings' best pressure rate in a game this year came against the Lions. It was like 50-something% pressure against the Lions that the Vikings generated. And so to answer the question, I guess that there's not, to me, there doesn't have to be a ton of concern from a pressure standpoint in one aspect. Like Jonathan Grenard, I tweeted this out. If you guys follow me on Twitter at Alec_Lewis, I tweeted this out on Monday that Jonathan Grenard is top in the NFL in pressure rate, just right behind Aiden Hutchinson. If you toggle with the amount of snaps, like Jonathan Grenard's season that he's putting together has been incredibly special. And so from a pressure rate on the edge, or from a pressure standpoint on the edge, he's not concerned. I don't think Andrew Van Ginkel is on the other side. He's generated pressure on his own right. And so neither of those two guys are the concern. For me, if there is a concern with the Vikings defense creating pressure, it would be this. Teams that are really savvy and they have really good play callers or really good quarterbacks, they utilize tempo in certain aspects of the game to where they can be the drivers and kind of dictate the defensive personnel. So you might be asking, you might be watching this, what do you mean by that, Alec? Dictate personnel. Well, one of Brian Flores' best attributes as a coordinator on game day is he it's kind of, think of it like it's the NBA starts tonight, so this is a perfect analogy. Think of it kind of like a basketball team. Some teams go small ball to match up better, and Brian Flores often goes really heavy in situations that often dictate runs, and so he has big defensive tackles in the game in run specific downs, and then in pass specific downs he switches with his personnel to have lighter bodies both on the front and on the back end. And so there are times when these good opposing coaches, play callers, quarterbacks notice that the Vikings are in a specific personnel and they use tempo or they don't substitute to keep the Vikings in that type of personnel. And so you saw it a couple times against the Lions where the Vikings had Harrison Phillips, Jerry Tillery, and Jonathan Bullard on run specific downs. They had those guys in. And once the Lions got a couple things rolling, they kept that group in situations where Brian Flores would have probably preferred to have lighter bodies and more pass rush specific players. And so that is why, when people talk, when it's trade deadline talk or free agency and people talk, the Vikings need to go get a big time pass rushing interior defensive lineman. Well, what that would really do for you is a guy like a Christian Wilkins, who the Vikings were interested in free agency. What he provides you is an ability to where you don't have to shuffle in and out personnel on a snap in and snap out basis the way the Vikings have. And so that's why when names are thrown out there of your Dexter Lawrence's, Jeffrey Simmons, like that's where that type of thing makes sense as a concept. Now, I will not report that either of those things are happening, but I are happening at this point is what I'd say. There's just been no buzz absolutely at all on either of those players. It just, if you think about how this defense would evolve, that's kind of where rightfully a lot of fans' minds go, and fans' minds should go there. But I appreciate the question, Amir. I hope that made sense. I will get to the next question, and this is the subject that I imagine I was going to get a lot of questions about because it has been a lot of the buzz today. So I'll just get right to it. KSG asks, is there legit belief in the Stafford trade? Kwesi has been talking about going all in in the past, but didn't want to go full Rams. I mean, look, here. I'm just going to answer this one time, and maybe if there are more questions about it over the course of this show, I guess I will get back to it and kind of reiterate this stance. But the first thing I just want to say is, every time something like this pops up, okay, when there is a big name player linked to a team in a massive trade, what I would ask you guys, and a lot of you guys are probably smart enough to know this, but like what I would ask you is where is this news coming from? And if it's coming from, this is not to throw shade at anybody, but if it's coming from the insiders that typically break a lot of news, then I would say I would put substance into that stuff. If it's coming from people with boots on the ground, I'd put substance into that stuff. This specific conversation, from what I've seen and from the people I've talked to, has not come from anything substantive. I've received multiple texts from not only friends and fans and people asking me questions. I've received texts from people in the industry about this. Like, there's no way. And just what I would say is, I have not heard anything at all remotely substantive related to this conversation. I do know, just having covered Kevin O'Connell for 3 years, he has an immense respect for Matthew Stafford. But like it is so much more complex than team. Like, there's a good player and there's a team, and let's just pair them together. There is locker room dynamics. There is belief in the current quarterback in Sam Darnold, which there is a genuine belief in him in this building, both from coaches and players. There is the money aspect of it and what that would mean for a team that only has $10 million of effective cap space right now. So again, the tagline here to answer this question is, I personally have not heard anything substantive related to this conversation. And I just would ask you guys who are smart enough. I know if you're watching the show, if you listen to my stuff, you read about it, you're smart enough to know that I just would be very attentive and to where some of this stuff comes from. And it's always crazy to me that in this media environment, anybody can throw out anything and then it catches wildfire. So that's what I'd say. I hope that answers it. As I go through the chat, I'm sure I will see comments from you guys, and I would be curious what you guys think of that. But I'll get to the next question. Maxwell Joseph, who says later in the chat, thanks. He appreciates the work. I thank you guys for listening. If you're new here, as I introed it at the top, my name's Alec Lewis. I cover the Vikings for The Athletic on a daily basis. I was out at practice about 45 minutes ago, and all I saw was stretching. I mean, I saw 4 minutes of stretching. I saw TJ Hockenson out there. I will be interested to see what this injury report looks like, because it appeared as if they didn't really want us to see very much today, which is that's the team can do what they do, and I appreciate it and I respect it, and we'll see. But Maxwell asked the question, is there a side of KO that we don't see on camera? between his own player journey, stress pressure as a head coach. I sense there's a lot of depth there that we don't always see as fans. That's a phenomenal question. I mean, I don't know if there's something that you couldn't intuitively see or identify with him privately that you couldn't see on camera. Like, I think you see a lot of the on camera aspects of who this guy is as a head coach. He is intentional. He is empathetic. He cares a lot. There's a lot of thought behind every single play. I mean, that's one thing I would try to get across. And this might come off as sounding like maybe too kind to him as a play caller or what have you. But I just, it's always fascinating to me as I watch these games and then I analyze them afterwards. I watch the film. I talk to people inside the building, and there are times where I have conversations with him, and it's always interesting to me the level of depth behind a lot of these play calls that I would have never considered, noticed, understood while watching on Sunday. And it could be anything from, like, why did they run that play call? Well, what you don't know is the defensive line in this specific formation. And so the Vikings canned it to a certain play. And so it's the most cliche ever thing in this sport since I've started covering it, to hear people say it's a chess match. Oh yeah, these coaches are really having a chess. But really, I would say with Kevin O'Connell, the one thing that I just, it's important probably to get across is when you see a certain play, whether it works or not, whether it looks good all the time or not, I think there is a level of intent and design behind all of these plays. And there are also often multiple plays packaged into one, to where it is then incumbent upon the players on the field to get into the right play. It's almost like if you're taking a test, like, do you have all of the answers? It is on you to get to the correct answer. And so that's one thing about him. I think he equips these guys and the game plans with multiple avenues to be able to beat whatever is in front of them. And so there's that. I mean, the other aspect of Kevin, I genuinely believe the empathy and the care for people and the player connection, all that stuff is real. I don't think it's fake. I mean, I like I said, I've had a lot of interactions with him. He's treated me. I mean, I can remember in 2022, it was my first year covering the NFL. It was my first year covering the team. I didn't even do training camp, and we were in Miami for the game against the Dolphins, where I think Skylar Thompson ended up playing in that game for the Miami, and the Vikings won by like a touchdown. I think Dalvin Cook had some crazy run that day, maybe like an 80-yard run or something. And I remember after asking him why the offense felt so, like, it just felt so disjointed. And he gave a pretty detailed answer about base personnel and nickel. And the next day I dug into the numbers. I wrote about it. And he and I had a conversation where, and I feel okay saying this, where like it seemed like he appreciated the willingness to want to learn, to want to care, to want to study. And so I think even with fans, like those who really care, those who are as passionate, like when he really says he appreciates that stuff, I believe that. So hopefully that gives you some perspective, Maxwell, but I appreciate it. Next question is from Ezra Gonzalez. How real is the possibility that we get Sexy Dexy? I believe he's talking about Dexter Lawrence, who is a what did Blake Brandel, the Vikings left guard, called Dexter Lawrence a grizzly bear on the field. And Blake is awesome. He's great. And so it was a very cool it was a very funny analogy at the time. But, I mean, I have a trade deadline story that I'm going to run tomorrow at The Athletic where I'll give a bunch of names and the realistic aspects of some of them. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is I guess the question that I have as I think about this conversation is, why would New York do this? I mean, why would the Giants part with a 26-year-old megastar at one of the most premium positions in the NFL? Like that just doesn't, whether you're rebuilding or not, it's hard for me to envision why you would get rid of that guy. Again, maybe the Giants look at their window and they say, we need 3 years to rebuild this thing. So we need 3 years worth of draft picks and we're going to strip it to the studs. But I mean, it's hard when you have a megastar like they do with Dexter Lawrence, and he is that. I mean, the numbers bear that out. You watch him on film. You guys saw him in the game against New York. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. It's just that would be the question. Like with the Vikings, I'm sure Brian Flores and the idea of Dexter Lawrence, I'm sure it makes him nothing makes him happier than the idea of that. And honestly, they have the cap space to bring on a guy like this. The draft capital aspect of it would raise a big question mark because this team doesn't have a ton of young players with upside, so they kind of need a lot of these draft picks. So I'm not going to put much into it. Like I've seen people on Twitter with they put Vikings are willing to, like I've said publicly, I think the Vikings should be buyers. And I think like, I'm not going to rule anything out, but as I say that, I like it's not really fair to use that comment and throw a Dexter Lawrence picture. That's kind of just like engagement farming, which is what I'll say. So I don't think, I mean, in terms of real, again, I never say never with this stuff because these things happen fast. And I've said before, I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is willing to be aggressive and be creative. And I think this coaching staff and these players deserve the front office getting aggressive with this team. Like they for what they've done, they deserve for this thing to be added to. I really believe that's why I said the Vikings should be buyers, because when a coaching staff and a locker room does what this coaching staff and locker room have done through 6 games, you deserve to be rewarded with that. And one of the best ways to reward a coaching staff and a locker room is to give them more pieces to work with. So that's what I'll say. And I appreciate the question. I hope that that makes sense. I'm just going to keep running down the list of questions here. And if you're new here, I see we've got like 53 people watching maybe. I'm Alec Lewis. I cover the Vikings for The Athletic, write pretty much every day. And then I've done a bunch of podcasts each week talking about this team, giving you hopefully a perspective that you can't get anywhere else of just access to the building and people inside the building. And I mean, I watch all the film. I talk to a lot of people across the league. So thank you guys for being here. If you are here and you are liking the show, please like and subscribe. It helps out the channel. And so I appreciate that. Here's the question from JK. Do top receiving tight ends like TJ Hockenson ever work with the receiver coaches like Keenan McCardell to improve their game? Or do they solely work with their position coaches? It's a very interesting, good question. TJ works with Brian Angelico, the tight ends coach, all the time. You see him out there at practice every single day. But I think, yeah, there are aspects like tune-ups of certain route running skill sets that a guy like Keenan McCardell has the depth of that maybe a Brian Angelico would not. Now, I say that Brian Angelico, the Vikings tight end coach, is very, very close with Kevin O'Connell. They've known each other forever, and he's been around the league for a long time. So he knows pretty much everything that you need to know about not only tight end play, pass protection, run blocking, receiving. So I don't know how much work TJ needs to get with Keenan. I also know, talking to TJ in the locker room in weeks past and in years past, like he learned a heck of a lot from guys that he's played with in the past. I mean, we've talked about some of his ability to run option routes from the slot. And what I mean by that is you'll often see TJ Hockenson kind of run off the line of scrimmage from the slot position, and then he can choose which way he goes depending on the leverage. And then it is incumbent upon the quarterback to kind of read where he's going, follow the body language, and hit him. That's why he's so effective underneath. And that's why when he is back, if it is Thursday, which we will probably get to here shortly, that's why I think it'll be so critical for this offense. So I appreciate the question, Jake. I hope that gives a perspective. Nicholas Miller asks, Alec, have you figured out Jeffrey Simmons' Jimmy John's order yet? Can you elaborate on your thoughts about the trade deadline? I see them holding steady, but sounds like you're hearing different. First off, Jimmy John's. Look, if I can get a sponsor for this show, I'm going to do it however I have to do it. So if it's Jimmy John's, look, I will work with that organization, and I will eat their subs, and that bread will sit in my stomach, and it will affect me. But Jimmy John's is not my sub of choice. It's not. You guys who have listened to the show, you know I'm a Jersey Mike's guy. I still would like the CEO to start watching my show to get the sponsor with that sandwich operation that they have over there. But Jeffrey Simmons, one thing about Jeffrey Simmons that I found very interesting. So I said earlier, I've got a trade deadline story coming tomorrow at The Athletic, so look for that. With a list of names and some ideas about what they could do, what makes sense to me. And obviously it's informed by conversations and stuff like that. But Jeffrey Simmons has a lower pressure rate this year than Jerry Tillery, than a guy like DJ Jones, who plays for the Broncos. He has a lower pressure rate than Adam Butler, the defensive interior player who plays for the Raiders. And I found that very interesting. Now, I haven't watched Jeffrey Simmons enough to know how much is that just statistical anomaly going on, or how much has he maybe not been the player that he's been. And then there are a host of reasons why that may be. Maybe the team is so bad that he doesn't feel as motivated. Maybe the edge rushers are not helping him out as much. Could be a lot of questions, but honestly, if I'm ranking the interior guys in terms of biggest swings possible, I would prioritize a Dexter Lawrence over Jeffrey Simmons. Now, that's what I would say. Kwesi doesn't ask me this stuff all the time. If he does, if Kwesi buzzes my phone after this show and he asks me what I think, that's what I tell him. So yeah, my thoughts about the trade deadline, and I've gotten into it a little bit on this show, but really, I feel like they should be buyers. The Vikings should be buyers. Like, as a person giving my own opinion, when a coaching staff is as effective as this coaching staff has been through 6 games, and when this locker room has given it as much as they have through 6 games, to me, it's only right. It would only be right for the front office to explore every avenue to make this team better and to give these guys who are putting their body on the line every single week the best possible chance to do what I know a lot of those guys internally want to do. And so, and just knowing Kwesi Adofo-Mensah the way I do, I think they will explore every creative avenue to doing, to adding to this team. Now, who knows what that looks like from a draft pick standpoint? This team only has 3 picks right now, and they'll probably only have 4 with the compensatory pick coming for Kirk Cousins. And that's 1 first rounder for 2025. That would be 1 third rounder if the comp pick occurs. And that would be 2 fifth rounders. And so it's not a ton of draft capital. And like I said, this is a team devoid of a lot of young talent with upside. So parting with a lot of these picks, that would be a tough decision. Now, they do have picks in 26 and 27. And again, with what this team has done, if you can acquire a player with the 5th or 6th round pick in the future, or even do some kind of pick swap with 4th later for a 6th late, like Kwesi is creative in that regard. He has used conditional picks and pick swaps a lot. And so that's why I just am not going to rule out anything. I will go ahead and tell you guys, as I transition to the next question. Jonathan Conyers asked, how real is Dexter Lawrence or Jeffrey Simmons? The name that, and this is not something I've heard from anybody internally, but it is from my own evaluation and some conversations with people. The name at this position group that to me does not get enough play in terms of could the Vikings add an interior defender? The name that I really like with the fit with where this team is at from a timeline perspective is Calais Campbell. I mean, this guy in Miami, I know he's 38 years old. I know he's been around like since I was 11 years old. I know he's played in the NFL, which is probably going to age some of you guys, and I apologize for doing that. But this guy has a higher pressure rate than both of the guys' names on the screen, Dexter Lawrence and Jeffrey Simmons. You talk to people down in Miami, they rave about him. He's 6'8", 307 pounds. And if you think about just the you're adding another all-pro to a defense with Harrison Smith and Stephon Gilmore, and he's only on a 1-year contract. So what would you have to ultimately give up for a guy like that? That's the name that to me makes even more, it's more realistic than the names on the screen. And he's just an absolute specimen. Like the guy he's been doing it forever. And I really think you add a guy like that who can pass rush the way he does, as big as he is, as imposing as he is to this defense. I mean, it becomes pretty fun. Janet Monahan, sounds like they're going to add Hockenson for Thursday's game. If so, who does he replace on the roster? I'm going to take a sip of water while you guys ponder that answer. So, you said sounds like they're going to add Hockenson for Thursday's game. It's definitely a possibility. I mean, I said earlier in the week on my podcast last night, honestly, that I wouldn't be surprised if TJ Hockenson plays Thursday. And if he does play, I bet it would be in a curated type of plan. I don't know if that means specific downs. I don't know if that means capped at a certain amount of snaps. If so, who does he replace on the roster? They've been so creative with up and downs with Robert Tunyon's and how they bring up a Bo Richter and practice squad elevation. So it wouldn't be, in terms of who he replaced, it wouldn't be someone that I think it would you'd it wouldn't blow me away no matter who it was, but I would not be surprised if he plays Thursday. We'll see on the injury report. I'm looking forward to seeing if he was a full go on Tuesday. If that's the case, I'm going to start to think probably that it is more likely that he does play in the game. But hope that answers the question. Would not be surprised. And then if they decide to wait to Indianapolis, it's not going to be the craziest thing in the world. And I will also add, because I've had multiple people say this to me, like, what are they waiting on? What is going on? Like, it's been 9 months since the surgery, and they've taken the long-term view. And if you understood the level of detail that this athletic training staff has taken with TJ Hockenson's recovery, it goes above and beyond what a lot of these organizations and these franchises put together from a rehab standpoint. I mean, they have worked with his private trainers in Nashville. They've flown out to see him in Nashville. They track every bit of his runs. They see what kind of mile per hour he's running and how that compares to him at his fullest. Like, there is every data point possible. So when they make this decision, like whether they wait a long time or not or whatever, as long as this guy is healthy for the duration of the season, that's what should be most important. Now, losing 2 in a row after a 5-game start, obviously it's going to evoke memories of the past for a lot of you guys who have rooted for this team for a while. But I mean, having him long-term is of the utmost importance. So I appreciate the question, Janet. We got 62 people in here, and so I'll reset real quick. If you don't know me, I'm Alec Lewis. I cover the Vikings for The Athletic. I do a podcast a couple times a week called The Alec Lewis Show, where I give some analysis of conversations I've had with people in the building, film that I've watched, numbers that I've looked at, all of that stuff, conversations with people around the league. And I really enjoy doing that. So if you guys are here for the first time, would love if you like and subscribe. That'll help us out. But really enjoy communicating with the fans, because I know you guys really care, and that's what makes this job fun. Let's get to the next question. It's fascinating that 2 years ago, Kwesi said you never want to go full Rams. With the window of opportunity this year, do you think the Vikings go all in for a blockbuster trade? Look, it was a fascinating quote, and I mean, like, for those who know, that was Kwesi sat down with USA Today in 2022 at the time, and they wrote a story about kind of his vision for running a team. And he said that at the time. And I think what he really meant by that is you don't want to mortgage your entire future just for your entire future for the present. And like, I think even he would admit now probably and say publicly, like, you want to win a Super Bowl more than anything else. That's what matters. That's what people talk about. That's what people remember. But I don't think his mindset has probably totally changed in that, like, and really that's part of why they've done what they've done from a salary cap perspective. Like, if they were to make a gigantic swing, a blockbuster trade, as you call it, they have the appropriate cap space to do it. And they have a rookie quarterback to where you have levers that you can pull to enhance the roster beyond draft picks at that point. And so I guess what I would say is, to me, for him, that comment is like, you have to have resources in whatever capacity, whether it's draft capital, whether it's cap space. You'd like to have both at all times. But if you're going to mortgage one of them, you like to have the other one. And reality is, they don't have a ton of they don't have a ton of draft picks for 2025, but they have ample cap space into the future. And so, like, the question would be, can you utilize some of your resources to appropriately bring a big name in to where you pay him the appropriate amount of money, and you also and that covers for the cap space you have in the future, but you also uphold a certain number of premium draft picks. And I'm rambling a little bit, but I guess what I would say is, think about it like the Bears acquiring Montez Sweat last year. They knew they had cap space that they were ultimately going to spend in free agency. So rather than getting to free agency and spending that cap space, what they did was they traded a couple picks for a player they knew they probably weren't going to get in free agency to ensure they got that quality of player. And that's where, if they were to make a big swing in the vein of like a Dexter Lawrence, let's just say, that's where that makes sense, is that you're never going to get a guy like that in free agency. It's just not going to happen. And so to acquire him via trade would be the only way you get that level of player. And then you have you have the available money to do it. Now, again, like I said much earlier, do I expect a guy like him to be acquired? It's a far cry. I mean, it's an incredible guy. And like I said before, I have a harder time understanding why the Giants would trade that guy than why the Vikings would try to go get him. Next question. Is Andrew Van Ginkel a Defensive Player of the Year candidate? He should. Yeah, I mean, he should be. And honestly, like, obviously, the interceptions stand out, but I don't think you can say enough about the flexibility that he gives this defense. Like, I don't know if you guys know or watch or notice, but on Sunday, they were having a hard time stopping the run with linebackers Ivan Pace and Josh Metellus and really being balanced on that second level. So what they do, they moved Andrew Van Ginkel to just be an off-ball linebacker, and he can do that, and he can help them live in that world. And like, there are very few players in the NFL who could just line up on the edge and rush the passer, who have the instincts to intercept the ball and off the line of scrimmage, who can line up at off-ball linebacker and not skip a beat. Like, part of the reason this Vikings defense has been so good through 7 weeks is they have two guys who are so they are able to process the field so quickly, and they are so athletic that they shrink underneath space. And those two guys are Blake Cashman and Andrew Van Ginkel. The Vikings have played a lot of coverages where they've got 4 guys deep and 2 guys underneath. So think about how much space there has to be underneath if there are only 2 guys. And the idea and the reality that they haven't just gotten exposed in that space is a testament to Andrew Van Ginkel and Blake Cashman's ability to constrict that space. I hope that makes sense, but it's been important for me to kind of think about and to analyze. Question from Ethan. Who do you think starts at right guard on Thursday? Then is there a concern with the lack of targets toward JJ towards the later parts of the game? Who do I think starts at right guard on Thursday? I like to answer things probabilistically, which is the most nerdy thing that I could say, and I wear glasses, and so it's probably not that surprising to you, but I think that's the most accurate way to answer some of this stuff. I would say I feel that there's probably a 60% chance that Ed Ingram starts at right guard, and there's probably a 40% chance that Dalton Risner starts at right guard. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. I want to see Dalton Risner practice fully healthy throughout the duration of the week. And then we'll see if ultimately they feel like it's just hit the end of the road from a capacity of the right guard situation. I'm getting texts relating to football, and so I'm my mind has shifted a little bit. Let's see here. Let's scroll. I've been sticking to it, so let's keep going. Thank you guys for being here. It's the Alec Lewis Show. If you're new here, would love you liked and subscribed. That would be awesome. That helps us a lot. And then you can find me on Twitter at Alec_Lewis. Truly asked, where is the slant pass this year for the Vikings? Yeah, I I think the underneath passes have definitely been fewer and farther between because you don't have TJ Hockenson available. So I think once he returns, you will feel like there's more throws to the underneath portion of the field. And I will also say, like, you can go back to the film and rewatch the game on Sunday. I can vividly remember Justin Jefferson catching an over pattern underneath, like an underneath drag. So they exist. I would say if there are lesser this season, it might be a byproduct of, Sam Darnold. It can throw the heck out of the football. We've seen that week in and week out. I don't need to tell any of you guys who have watched these games that whatsoever. Like, this guy can spin it. But I would say if there is a question about him, or there is a reason to be hesitant watching him, at times it is decision-making and just his ability to see the field. Like that's like I talked to a Jets executive before the season who was a part of the drafting him. He's like, look, he turned the ball over, and we had questions like, was he the best processor? Did he have the best vision of the field ever? It didn't feel like they believed that even at the time. And so to have a guy thinking about the middle of the field, I mean, it gets tight in there. And that's why red zone stuff is tough too. Like think about the slant that Sam Darnold tried to Jordan Addison on the 2-point conversion, which was a critical play in Sunday's game. He actually had Jalen Naylor potentially over in the corner at the pylon. It would have been a tight throw, would have been a contested catch, but things move very fast there, and it's similar on the underneath level. I'm going to keep going here, and I'm running out of gas. So thank you guys for being here. I've already hit the Stafford stuff, but I'll just reiterate. Had you heard any rumors about Stafford and Kupp? Cooper Kupp, no, that's probably more for the national people. I don't think Cooper Kupp is in the crosshairs of a team that has Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor. But Matthew Stafford, as I said earlier, when stuff like this pops up, be very and I know a lot of people listening and watching this probably are, but I'd be very intentional about realizing where this stuff is coming from and then understanding is it being validated by the people who cover this stuff and break news and are on the or have boots on the ground. And I can tell you that I've not heard anything substantive regarding Stafford with this situation in the Vikings right now at all. I have not. I really have not heard that. And so I'll say that. I also will pair that with the idea that Kevin O'Connell and Matthew Stafford worked very closely together in Los Angeles the year they won the Super Bowl. I know their families are close. And so, again, dots get connected, and then someone throws out this report, and then and then it's hard to sift through in this media environment what's real and what's not. And I can just tell you, I haven't heard anything substantive related to this conversation. So that's what I will say. Let's see. Does interior defense help reduce impact of dagger routes? I don't know, Digits, if you're talking about the interior of the defensive line. Oh, yeah, you are. You said right after that, the interior defensive line. I mean, potentially, if you have more juice on the interior from a pass rush standpoint, then the quarterback has less time to sit back there and throw the ball on a dagger route over the middle. Now, for you guys watching who don't know what a dagger route is, I'm going to give it to you guys. A dagger route is when one guy goes vertical and then they run a dig right behind it. So you're clearing out that deep space and then running right over the middle of the field, where you saw the Lions get the Vikings a bunch of time. Now, one of the things that I would say about that Lions game is when you have a guy like Jameson Williams, the defense is probably afraid that he's going to take the top off of it. So the safeties play farther back than they would against other receivers. And I think it's probably a lesson for them. They didn't get beat over the top, other than the one very well designed play in the Vikings territory where they hit Amon-Ra St. Brown over the top. And other than that, they really haven't gotten beat over the top. So I expect even the safeties moving forward to kind of come down and constrict space probably more than they have. I will also say, just because I've been thinking, and I've had conversations with people about that Lions game, from what it sounds like, the Lions were really rattled early in that game. The first 3 possessions, I think they were like, holy cow, this team brought it. I think they felt really the Lions. I'm talking about the Lions. I think they felt like the Vikings were pretty tough in general. And I think they respect them as much as anybody they've played throughout the year. That's what I've heard. Because I have you guys, the injury report just came out. So I'm going to give this to you guys immediately through my email. I'll filibuster until that, but I hope that makes sense in terms of the dagger route and interior pressure. Interior pressure helps everything. I mean, you guys watch it with the Vikings on a weekly basis. Like when Ed Ingram or Garrett Bradbury push back and Sam Darnold can't step up, it's something that matters. The injury report for today for the Vikings, because I have you guys and I have it right here. TJ Hockenson was limited again with the knee. Aaron Jones was limited again with the hamstring. Dalton Reisner was full go once again. And then Theo Jackson, Pat Jones, Josh Oliver, Harrison Phillips, they were all full as well. So we'll see with TJ Hockenson. Could go either way. Blake Cashman did not practice. I'm looking at him more for the Colts game. Let's go very quickly with the rest of this rundown, and then I will get you guys out of here. I appreciate the 53 of you. So are you guys that I see are here. Those of you ask questions, I cannot thank you enough. If you're new to the Alec Lewis Show, please like and subscribe. I'm going to go rapid fire, and we'll get out of here. Tycoon says, let me show this. Is TJ Hockenson playing the season? Yes, he's playing the season. He might play Thursday. If he does not, he will play against the Colts. Do not worry. It's been about 9 months. It's very normal. A lot of people are freaked out. There's no reason to do that. Caden D, any concern about Dallas Turner? I don't. Kevin O'Connell said earlier this week that like he foresees him becoming an absolute monster for Brian Flores defense. And I just would say two things. One, this defense just really does not set up for young guys to immediately come in and have a ton of success. It's complicated. There's a lot asked to you. And when you're 5-1, like, truth be told, there's not really much like developmental opportunity time. Like it's like you're engaged. This team can beat anybody. So you're gonna have the best guys out there. Jonathan Grenard has had one of the best seasons that any edge rusher in the NFL has had, pass rushing right now. And Andrew Van Ginkel, someone asked me earlier if he is a defensive player of the year candidate. So where is the opportunity for Dallas Turner? Like he plays with the second team a little bit with Patrick Jones. I do wonder from a size perspective, like he's almost like he looks a little lean sometimes rushing on the edge. So the question would be, could he get bigger? Could he get stronger? But then could that athleticism remain if he does that? It's a question I have. We'll see, but I just don't. He's an Alabama guy. He works hard. He's just got a role right now in a defense that has proven a lot and that doesn't really have time for just like throwing guys in to develop them right now. They've won too much for that. Let's see. Des Bryant quote tweeted the Stafford report guy and said he's legit. Take that for what it's worth. I'm not taking that for anything. Des Bryant, I'm sure talks to players across the league, and I don't know much about the Stafford report guy. But I just want to reiterate, when this type, if there are people who traffic in news across the NFL, and those people have the jobs that they do for a reason. I don't need to name names. You guys know who those people are. And there has been nothing substantial from those guys. And from my standpoint, covering it on the ground, being out at practice 45 minutes ago, I've heard nothing substantive related to that conversation. So I'm glad Des Bryant is having fun with it. Let's see. You said the Des Bryant thing, but I'll get you back, Ryder. I think Cashman being out affected the middle of the field more than anything. There's no question that was a factor. And like I said, you got to hand it to Ben Johnson. There were Vikings players in the locker room today talking about Ben Johnson. I mean, there is an immense respect for what they've built over there offensively. And just like I said about 5 minutes ago, I think the Lions came out of that game with even more of an immense respect for the Vikings. Like you talk to people, it sounds like they believe the Vikings are the toughest team they've played so far, and they were pretty rattled early in the game. So very interested to see what happens Thursday. We will have a full preview of the Thursday game at The Athletic. I'm going to have a full trade deadline story, kind of a primer to get us going with 2 weeks away on Wednesday at The Athletic. So look for those two things. Thank you guys for being here, for asking questions. It was a fun 45 minutes. I enjoy doing this. I hope you guys got something out of it. If you can, while you're here, please like and subscribe. Really appreciate if you guys would do that. It helps us out a ton. But follow me on Twitter at Alec_Lewis. Updates on Viking stuff all the time. I'm flying to LA on Wednesday and can't wait to get to SoFi and watch that game. But appreciate you guys being here. Thank you guys for watching, and that will do it for a live edition of the Alec Lewis Show.